Inside California's darkest prison, Pelican Bay secrets revealed. Blood on the yard. The siren screamed before dawn. Red and blue lights splashed across the gray concrete walls of Crescent City, a tiny coastal town in Northern California that lived in the shadow of something far darker than its misty shoreline. Just outside town, behind 12-foot fences coiled with razor wire, stood Pelican Bay State Prison, a fortress designed for the men too dangerous to exist anywhere else. That morning, the fog was thick enough to swallow the pine trees, but not the horror that was about to unfold. In the prison's main yard, under the watch of armed guards in the towers, 2 inmates lay motionless on the ground. Blood pooled into the cracks of the concrete, spreading in slow streams. One had been stabbed repeatedly with a homemade shank fashioned from sharpened metal. The other, a man known only by his street name, Ghost, had his throat slashed so deep that the guards who rushed in couldn't tell if he was still alive. The lockdown order came instantly. Sirens blared through the prison, cell doors slammed shut, and the yard transformed from chaos to silence in minutes. But for investigators, the real nightmare had only just begun. The victims. Ghost wasn't just another inmate. His real name was Arturo Villanueva, once a mid-level enforcer for the Nuestra Familia, one of California's most notorious prison gangs. His presence at Pelican Bay wasn't random. He'd recently been transferred from another prison under mysterious circumstances, rumored to have cut a secret deal with authorities. Word spread quickly in the inmate grapevine. Ghost had flipped. The other victim was less known. Raymond Harker, a white supremacist with ties to the Aryan Brotherhood, had been serving life for a brutal home invasion. Harker's body told a different story than Ghost's. While Ghost's killing looked personal, brutal and precise, Harker's was fast, almost opportunistic. Investigators immediately wondered, was this one coordinated strike or 2 different killers using the chaos of the yard as cover? The investigators. Inside Pelican Bay, crimes were nothing new. Violence was expected. But the sheer brazenness of 2 killings in broad daylight, under armed guard, rattled everyone. The case landed on the desk of Special Agent Lucas Hayes, a veteran with California's Department of Corrections Gang Intelligence Unit. Hayes had spent years studying the politics of prison gangs, and he knew one thing: nothing in Pelican Bay happened by accident. Hayes' partner, Detective Marisol Vega from Del Norte County, wasn't convinced. What if this wasn't ordered? She asked as they stood over the bodies, the fog still rolling through the yard. What if this was personal? Hayes shook his head. Not here. Not in Pelican Bay. Every blade, every fight, it's all permission. Someone gave the green light. Clues in the chaos. The shank used on Ghost was crude but effective, a piece of metal filed down and wrapped in cloth. But it was the second weapon that chilled investigators. Near Harker's body they found a small, sharpened toothbrush handle. It bore faint traces of black ink, almost like it had once been used as a tattoo needle. Whoever killed him hadn't just grabbed a weapon of convenience. They'd repurposed something deeply personal. Inside Ghost's cell, the search team found scraps of paper hidden under his mattress. Scrawled in shaky handwriting were lists of names, dates, and numbers. At first glance it looked like a coded ledger. But one name stood out, circled in ink: Morales. Detective Vega flipped through the papers. Who's Morales? Hayes' face darkened. The wrong man to cross. The suspects. Luis L. Jeef. Morales was one of Pelican Bay's most feared inmates, a high-ranking shot caller for the Mexican Mafia. He was already serving multiple life sentences, but in Pelican Bay that didn't matter. His influence extended far beyond the prison walls. Hayes believed Ghost had been working as an informant against Morales. If Morales suspected betrayal, Ghost's days were numbered. But what about Harker? His killing didn't fit. Unless Hayes realized it was meant to send a message, not just to Ghost but to anyone who might even think of cooperating with authorities. 2 bodies, 2 gangs, 1 warning. Silence is survival. A web of betrayal. As the prison remained under full lockdown, investigators interviewed inmates one by one. Nobody wanted to talk. Eyes darted, answers were clipped, and fear hung heavy in the air. But one lifer, an older inmate with fading tattoos, muttered a chilling phrase before shutting down completely. Check the tapes. You'll see who wasn't where they were supposed to be. When Hayes and Vega pulled the surveillance footage, they found something shocking. Minutes before the attack, one of the guards had walked off his post overlooking the yard. His absence wasn't long, less than 5 minutes, but it was enough. The murders happened in that window. The guard's name was Officer Daniel Brooks, a 10-year veteran with no history of misconduct. When questioned, Brooks claimed he had stepped away due to a sudden stomach issue. But Hayes didn't buy it. "Nobody just walks away here," he said. "Not unless they know what's about to happen." The breaking point. By nightfall, rumors swirled inside the prison. Inmates whispered that Ghost wasn't the only informant. That someone else, maybe even a guard, had been feeding information to investigators. The line between convict and cop blurred, and trust evaporated on both sides. Detective Vega studied the notes from Ghost's cell again. She noticed something Hayes had overlooked. Next to Morales' name was a date, one that matched the transfer order bringing Ghost to Pelican Bay. The implication was clear. Ghost hadn't stumbled into this prison by accident. Someone wanted him here. The question was who? Cliffhanger. 2 men were dead. A gang boss sat untouched in his cell, rumored to have pulled the strings. A guard's story didn't add up. And hidden in the coded scrawls under Ghost's mattress was a name that threatened to unravel everything. Not Morales, but Brooks, the very guard who walked away. Detective Vega looked at Hayes, her voice barely above a whisper. If Brooks was in on it, then this isn't just prison politics. This is an inside job. Hayes didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the evidence bag where the bloody toothbrush weapon sat sealed. On its handle, faint but undeniable, were 2 letters scratched deep into the plastic. MB. The initials didn't match any inmate, but they matched someone else. Someone wearing a badge. And when they opened Officer Brooks' locker the next morning, what they found inside changed everything. The quiet power. Brooks' locker smelled like bleach and cold metal. Inside, stacked behind a neatly folded jacket and a spare duty belt, was a brown lunch sack sealed with packing tape. Hayes slid it open with a pocket knife. Out spilled an old flip phone, 3 thick rubber-banded rolls of cash, and a photocopy of a transfer order with a signature line scrawled in blue ink. Lieutenant Matthew Bellinger. Initials, MB. Vega turned the phone over. A strip of athletic tape ran along the back, and on it, written with a dyeing marker, were the same 2 letters scratched into the toothbrush. MB. She clicked the phone on. No lock code. The text inbox showed a single thread from a number saved as MB. The most recent message was 4 days old. Window confirmed. 5 minutes. Walk. Hayes looked at the copy of the transfer. Bellinger signs off on movements from receiving and release. If Ghost was routed here, it went past his desk. They bagged everything and called internal affairs, but the chain of custody ritual couldn't blunt the feeling pressing on Vega's ribcage. Whoever MB was, he wasn't hiding in a cell. He was walking these halls, eating from the same break room microwave, wearing the same badge. By noon, the rumor mill was a machine. Inmates claimed a green light had been ordered not by a gang, but by someone higher. A porter in the corridor said he'd seen Officer Brooks arguing with a lieutenant 2 nights before the murders, their voices low and tight as wires. The porter couldn't catch the words, just the look on Brooks' face when it ended, like a man standing on the edge of a cliff and hearing the earth slide. Vega and Hayes went for Brooks next. He didn't show for his shift. His phone went straight to voicemail. His address in town was a renter's duplex with cracked stucco and a dead fern on the porch. The door was unlocked. Inside, the TV flickered on a paused news channel, a blue bowl of cereal softening on the coffee table. In the bedroom closet, a duffel bag sat zipped, clothes still folded inside. On the dresser, a single picture frame faced the wall. Vega turned it around. Brooks, his arm around a little girl with long brown hair and a missing front tooth. The photograph had a thumbprint smudge across the child's cheek. "Find the mother," Hayes said. There was no mother listed in county records. The girl Emma lived with her grandmother 2 towns over. When Vega called, the old woman's voice trembled. "Daniel said he might be gone a while. He told Emma to be brave. He gave me an envelope for rent." "Did he say why?" Vega asked. Pause. "He said somebody would get hurt if he didn't do what they asked. He didn't say who." Back at Pelican Bay, internal affairs moved slowly, like they were afraid of knocking something over. Bellinger was on site in his office answering emails, sipping coffee as if the prison weren't tightening around him. When Hayes and Vega asked to speak with him, he smiled like a man accustomed to being feared for all the wrong reasons. He was thick through the shoulders, with an old boxer's nose and eyes lit by a permanent, friendly squint. "You're chasing ghosts," he said, leaning back. Pun intended. "Brooks is a decent officer. If he stepped off post, he had a reason. Like a 5-minute window and a phone that says MB?" Hayes asked. Bellinger let the question float. "I don't know what your phone says, Agent. But I know this, you don't get to walk into my prison and throw letters like darts because they stick to the first target you like." He slid a thin smile toward Vega. We're all on the same team. Vega's temper flared, but Hayes pressed a hand against the table, palm down, a quiet warning. He'd played this game before. When corruption wore a badge, it dressed itself in professionalism and policy, rubbing shoulders with procedure until it felt indistinguishable. That night, a fire alarm shrieked in B block. Smoke pumped through the vents of a service corridor. A trash can smoldered, a bundle of rags black at the edges. While custody scrambled, someone hit the power on the central evidence room. The cameras blinked. 2 minutes of darkness. When the lights returned, the brown lunch sack from Brooks' locker was gone. Internal Affairs called it an inventory error. Vega called it what it was, a message. The next morning, the lifer who'd told them to check the tapes was found dead in his cell, hanging from a sheet. The note he left was written in block letters, uneven and precise. I can't live with what I did. He had no history of self-harm. The handwriting didn't match his commissary forms. The camera outside his tier had glitched the night before, the same window as the evidence blackout. The prison shrugged. Old infrastructure, the warden said, palms up. We're doing what we can. In the parking lot, someone let the air out of Vega's tires and scratched her rear bumper with a screwdriver. Stop digging. She didn't tell Hayes. She drove to a gas station, filled the tires, and washed the words away with a rag. The water dripped down her arm, cold as wire. She was not going to let a lieutenant with a smile and initials take her case. They went back to the beginning. The toothbrush handle. The ink traces. The initials gouged into plastic. Vega found a line in an old incident report. Inmate contraband tattoo shop shut down last fall, a makeshift parlor in a maintenance conduit behind Module Bravo, MB. The report listed the conduit's access point, a rusted service door behind the laundry. It had been welded shut. Ace stared at the code. MB could be two things, he said. A person and a map. They walked the spine of the prison with a maintenance map borrowed from a janitor who didn't ask questions. The laundry walls sweated with heat. Behind a bank of industrial dryers, hidden under a bolted electrical panel and a film of lint, they found it. A welded seam that had been cut and re-welded so many times it looked like a scar. Ace tapped the metal. It rang hollow. Vega slid a painter's razor under a lip of paint and pride. The weld split like a scab. The panel swung open into darkness. A service tunnel choked with dust and spiderwebs, snaking into the belly of the prison. A stale draft breathed against her face. Hayes clicked on his flashlight and led. The tunnel widened to a low chamber. There, arranged with the care of a grocery shelf, sat contraband. Phones, tiny baggies of heroin wrapped in green balloons, vials of Suboxone strips, a tower of burner SIM cards, and a zippered pouch filled with cash so fresh it still smelled like ink. On the wall, in grease pencil, someone had written a number, 27-4-5. Next to it, a small drawing of a star. Vega took a photo. What's the code? Hayes didn't answer. His flashlight had fallen on something else, a clipboard with intake sheets. The top page was a photocopy of the ghost transfer order. Below it, a roster of tower assignments for the day of the murders. In the margin, next to the West Yard post, someone had scrawled walk 5 minutes, underlined twice. The initials beneath it weren't MB. They were LH. Hayes froze. That's not mine, he said, voice tight. That's not. Bootsteps scraped behind them. Hayes spun. Bellinger stood in the mouth of the tunnel with two officers flanking him, both men he recognized from the towers. One rested a hand on his baton, the other held a taser low and ready. Bellinger's smile was gone. You shouldn't be down here, he said. This is a safety hazard. Vega lifted her chin. You signed the transfer that got a man killed. I sign dozens of transfers a week, Bellinger replied. It's bureaucracy, detective. You wouldn't understand. He nodded at the clipboard. That's one of ours. Funny how your partner's initials wound up on it. Hayes felt the ground give just enough to make the world tilt. Someone's setting me up. Someone is cleaning up, Bellinger said softly. All of us, whether we like it or not. Do you know how this place stays quiet? Not by luck. By arrangements. He stepped into the light, his face now bare of pretense. You break one arrangement, you don't just risk a riot. You risk the lives of men and women who work here so your world can sleep. Vega's hand eased toward her holster. Who gave the green light? Bellinger's eyes flicked to the stack of SIM cards. Different question, he said. Who turned on the lights? The officer with the taser raised it. Hands, he said. Hayes lifted his palms, mouth dry. You used Brooks, he said to Bellinger. You sent messages from a burner labeled with your initials, walked him up to the line and pushed. Why? Bellinger's gaze drifted. For the first time, something like regret flickered across it. Because someone sent me a picture, he said. A little girl with a missing tooth. They texted her route to school, down to the minute. He exhaled. We all have someone. And you? Vega asked. Who do you have? Bellinger shook his head. The wrong friends. The taser crackled. Vega moved on instinct, stepping into the arc, ripping the taser hand sideways as it fired so the dart slammed into the concrete and danced blue. Hayes lunged at the second officer, catching him by the collar and driving him into the wall. The tunnel rang with grunts and the metallic clash of bodies in a space too small for violence. Bellinger reached for Vega's wrist and got an elbow to the jaw that snapped his head back. He recovered like a man who'd been hit before, pulled a compact pistol from under his jacket and leveled it. Hayes saw the gun and threw himself across Vega. The shot punched the air. Heat lanced his shoulder. The flashlight skittered across the floor, its beams spinning madly over the contraband altar and the grease pencil code. Vega was already on her knees, her own weapon braced in two hands. Drop it, she shouted. Bellinger stood very still. His jaw worked. For a second, behind the lieutenant, Hayes saw the whole shape of it. The quiet deals that kept rival gangs from detonating, the officers who took envelopes and promised to look away, the phone pipeline that snaked through Module Bravo and out into the world. It wasn't a conspiracy, it was an ecosystem. Bellinger lowered the pistol and let it clatter. The two officers froze, eyes blown wide. Vega cuffed them all with hands that didn't shake. Hayes pressed his palm to the heat blooming under his shirt. Call it in, he said, each word iron. By dusk, Internal Affairs was very loud and very earnest. The warden gave a statement about isolated misconduct. Bellinger's office was sealed. The service tunnel was photographed from every angle. Brooks turned himself in at a highway patrol station 3 counties south, cheeks hollow, eyes burnt out. He said he'd walked because men in a white pickup had parked across from his daughter's school for 3 days, and on the 4th day he found a toothbrush in his mailbox carved with MB. He didn't know who they were. He didn't ask. The district attorney moved fast because the town was watching. Bellinger was arraigned for conspiracy, Brooks for accessory. Hayes sat in a hospital room while a nurse stapled his shoulder. Vega leaned against the window, staring at the lobster-pink sunset. You think it's done? She asked. Hayes watched the staples bite his skin together. Things like this aren't done, he said. They're interrupted. 3 months later, a man in a medium-security prison near Sacramento bled out in the shower. The weapon was a sharpened toothbrush, the handle ink-stained, the initials carved deep. The yard cameras glitched for 5 minutes. The watch commander that day had no history of misconduct. His name was never released to the press. Vega kept a copy of the grease pencil code in her desk. Some nights she traced the numbers with a finger, 27-4-5, the sequence that unlocked a contractor's tool closet no one had ever thought to check. She wondered how many other closets existed, tucked into the bones of places built to hold secrets. They put Bellinger behind glass and ticked another case closed. But in the courtroom hallway, Vega passed a man in a suit with a prison contractor's badge clipped to his belt, smiling like he owned the carpet under her feet. He nodded in polite apology as they squeezed by each other. She didn't sleep well that night. She dreamt of tunnels under the pine trees, of phones vibrating in the dark with messages that said only walk. In the morning she made coffee so strong it could stand on its own and opened her notebook to a clean page. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Keep your eyes open. Some arrangements never end, they just change hands.